Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Quick intro. I got a special guest today for this episode, as we've done many times on here. This was a really cool talk. I now have spoken to a couple of doctors here the last couple of months. This is Dr. Schiffer. His first name is Fredric, and he's a medical doctor. And he's been doing things for a long time. He has a new book called Goodbye Anxiety, Depression, Addiction, and PTSD. And his theory is the life-changing science of dual brain psychology. So without further ado, here's my talk with Dr. Schiffer. I got your book, but I haven't really read too much of it. And I was listening to something that you did, but yeah, I'll just kind of give you a little brief uh thing about me, and then we'll just get into your stuff. But and really the path that I've gone down with my bipolar diagnosis has really just been a lot of medication, really. I've never really been able to uh you know wean off the meds, however you want to say it, and kind of transition into managing my illness without
Well,
the medication.
I think that
Yeah.
the diagnostic system in psychiatry does a great deal of harm, and
Yeah.
I think that bipolar uh, was created by some colleagues of mine at McLean, and I wouldn't refer my dog to them, and it comes from uh, that manic depressive illness.
Right.
And I've seen one manic patient in my career. And that was a patient I saw in medical school who had a full-blown mania and
Right.
talked a mile a minute. And then they've kind of diluted that and pretended that did you ever go shopping? Did you enjoy it? Did you
Oh,
get home?
right. Overspending.
Yeah, it just,
Yeah.
it gets, uh,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I mean, I do want to hear what you, so I would say I've been suicidal. I almost died
yeah,
from,
I'm not saying that you don't have problems or the people who get
right,
diagnosed
right. Yeah.
don't have problems, but they make it sound like, it's a medical illness, and it's not. It's
Well,
due to trauma.
yeah, for sure. And I think even I've done a lot of work with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, mostly as a speaker, a little bit of leading some groups. And it's interesting that it's been around for a while. And it's like, oh, you guys are using, illness. And then people get offended. And then that goes into the disease model also with substances too. And like, if you say it's
Yes.
an
And
illness,
I
then
don't have any addicts in my practice.
right.
I
Yeah.
have covered it.
But yeah, I do. I think you said it at the beginning of the book. It's like, okay, it's either meds or psychotherapy, right? And, I do think there's like, you can think your way into certain emotions, right? Obviously, if you're having like constant negative thoughts, but my experience of being on meds for a while, my complaint and which I've talked about on here is like, yeah, it makes you feel, it's like it feels like bipolar is the diagnosis that you get when you have an episode, because though that's how the diagnosis happens. I didn't sleep for like a month, and that's why I got put on medication. And obviously it was a desperate, chaotic experience, which is what a lot of people go through. And so you're not really thinking through, hey, if I stay in these meds for the next 20 years, because now I'm coming up on 2008, I've been on Seroquel and I'm still on it.
Mhm.
And the times I've tried to
And
get on
how
it,
much you're taking?
what'd you say?
What's your dose?
Well, I went up to 600 from 500, and I used to be on,
That's very dangerous.
yeah, and I used to be on 1500 for 3 years from a doctor who was crazy. and I took three other things, and then I tried to get off all of it, and I almost died because I had like a 9 month episode. But
What you can do though is go very slowly, taper. That is what.
well, yeah, and I just tried to do an adjustment the end of January from 600 to 450 with the doctor, and it's kind of a newer doctor because
But
my
that's
yeah.
too much. You got to go from 650 to 550,
Oh,
or
too
gotta
big
go
of a
down.
jump. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and do it
yeah,
slowly.
but do you think I've never really been able to no nor have I tried very hard to really be like, hey, could I get down to 200 or 100? And I mean, because I've been so used to this high dose for so long. I'm getting some free medical advice here, I guess. But I take guanfacine and then Neurontin, although Neurontin I that was something I took a long time ago and then I got back on it. So I've had a couple of episodes in the last year from trying to be like, hey, I want to get off the meds. And it does bring a great deal of discomfort to me. But then also it's like, yeah, my complaint is I don't feel great a lot. Right. And it's like, I think that's the effect of if you had a time machine, you're like, hey, I wish I could go back and not have stayed on this stuff as long as I have, you know? Um, but anyway, that's kind of where I've been at with that. But maybe I can ask you more about it, you know, through email or a text or something. But yeah, what is your so you have this book, Goodbye Anxiety, Depression, and PTSD, and it sounds like you have some unique kind of takes on trauma, which I feel like I've read a little bit of The Body Keeps the Score, which is kind of the big book on trauma. I'm sure you're
Right.
aware of that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I know Bessel.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, didn't he? Isn't he? Didn't he study in Massachusetts?
He's in Massachusetts. He
Okay,
lives there.
yeah, I've read some of the book, and he
And he
talks
was in
about.
Harvard for the beginning of his career, and he went to Boston University. Now he's independent.
Awesome, Boston University, good hockey team. Um, yeah, so I know you have like I guess maybe we just start there. Like, what is your how long have you been studying these things, or is your background like medical doctor and then also psychiatry as well?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point. So I started out in internal medicine and did an internship and residency in internal medicine. Came to Harvard to do a fellowship in cardiology and completed that. And we published some important papers in cardiology, but they were on stress and heart disease.
Okay.
And I developed a like an exercise test, but it was an emotional stress test.
Okay.
And it was actually very good, and it should be used today, but it's unless somebody's behind um, uh, product or an idea, it dies. Um, so I went into psychiatry to get more of an education about psychocardiology. And after I completed my training at McLean at Harvard, uh, I learned that cardiologists and cardiac patients didn't want anything to do with the psychiatrists. And so I just stayed on at McLean. I've been at McLean since I started decades ago. Uh, and so I'm now a happy psychiatrist.
Okay. So you do see people like regularly and prescribe
Yes, I have a
medications, and
practice. Yeah.
you do that carefully and with a lot of um are you careful about how you put people on things, and are you like telling them, hey, you shouldn't stay on this for more than a year or something like that? Or how does
Well,
that go? Yeah.
I prescribe medication, but mostly I work on psychotherapy and on the work that we'll talk about. It's a theory of the dual brain psychology
Okay.
and how that applies. uh, both in the consultation room, and we're doing a large study for NIH, which I don't know if it still exists. Um, uh, but we're completing the study, and it's for fentanyl addiction, and we're getting great results.
Oh,
I'm
wow. Okay.
blinded, but about half the people are doing very well, and about half who are probably are on the sham treatment, although I don't know who's on what treatment. But I doubt that a sham treatment or a placebo is going to treat fentanyl addiction. But we have we have a large number of people who in the study have done very well. And we're very pleased with that. We think that the results are going to be terrific. But I don't know that.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's the National Institute of Health or something, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, okay.
And it's our it's our phase 2 study. In our phase 1 study, we also got great results. And the treatment is something that was derived from the theory. So the theory is applicable in psychotherapy, and also there are some applications that I can discuss
Okay.
that come out
Yes.
of the theory. Yeah.
Yeah, so your idea well, so with trauma, right, it's kind of like what is trauma? I mean, I think that most people listening probably know what it is, right? There's different levels of, a car
Well,
accident or
actually,
right, right,
I want to say that sometimes it's obvious. Okay, so if you have a
right,
violent alcoholic father, or if there's sexual abuse, it's obvious what the
right,
trauma is. Or if you're a combat veteran, where you've been traumatized. But mostly, it's insidious, and it might be a father who doesn't have time for you, or he doesn't have a friendly relationship with you, or a mother who's kind of putting you down, or a sibling who's bullying you, or a neighbor who bullies you, and or someone who ridicules you. And then what happens is then you go to school and you can't read because you're coming to school with all this nonsense that was going on somewhere else, and then you get blamed for being dyslexic, and then the other kids don't relate to you, and you feel like an outcast, and the only people who you can relate to are other people who are traumatized, and they're on drugs and drinking alcohol in 7th grade,
right,
and then by the time a person becomes an alcoholic, he forgets all about how it happened, and it's his fault. And he goes to an AA meeting and raises his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Fred. I'm an alcoholic."
right.
And and I think that that's just another trauma. So I think that trauma for most people is more insidious and often unknown or undiscovered. Sometimes it's really forgotten. I had a patient who had cavities in all her teeth, and she's in her late 50s, and I asked her if she had any bad experiences. She's an intelligent woman and uh, 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 very competent, but she wasn't brushing her teeth. And I said, "Did you have any problem with the dentist uh, or some kind of trauma?" And then she remembered, but she hadn't talked about this before, and she had plenty of opportunity to. She fell. I think she was about 9 years old and broke all of her teeth in the front of her face, and had a lot of surgery, and it was a very traumatic experience for her. And after we dealt with that, she was able to get her mouth repaired, and but so here was a severe trauma that was posing a problem for her, that she it wasn't that she had amnesia about it, but it wasn't in her awareness.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think for me, I think it seems obvious more just because I've had this podcast and, I've been talking about these things even before I've had the podcast. And um but it does seem to be more more of a thing in the in the language of mental health, but it does seem that yeah, I do agree with you. I think it's like you have a trauma, like to your example with the alcoholic, and then you're in distress, pain, and you I think we can just default to like numbing ourselves out with a lot of things. Substances is in there a lot, food, sex, whatever, especially in the American culture with just kind of the access to like phones and internet, TV, and like so many things done in excess kind of, become a disservice to us. But what is your, and then the other layer is like, my understanding is that, like, to my example, like, I had a bipolar episode, then I got put on all these meds, and the long term treatment, I guess, other than therapy, is it doesn't seem like the medication gets to the root of what's bothering you if it is trauma, and it just kind of seems then it prolongs, like it's it's keeping you stable, but then you're not really healing.
That's
You
that,
know?
that's
Right.
in fact,
Yeah.
it is a trauma. It's just being called bipolar is like being called a son of a gun.
Yeah. Well, it's so common in the language too, like
no, but so is
yeah, yeah.
alcoholic,
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
and so if you call me Fred the alcoholic, it's uh, it's no matter how you frame it and how nice it's supposed to be, it's an insult, or it's not something that makes you feel good. It's a trauma.
Well, I think part of it is this goes against things I've participated in, and I also just got a job as a peer support specialist.
Right.
So I should probably be careful what I say, but
I agree, I'm not. I love people who have substance problems, and so I'm not. What I'm saying is that
right,
it's not their fault, but they're getting blamed and they're getting traumatized. So I'm not trying to stigmatize somebody.
for
I'm just
sure.
saying that the
Yeah.
diagnosis is stigmatizing and traumatizing.
Yeah, well, I think what's happened for a while because of the internet, because of social media. Now, if you're not on those things, you might be like, "Oh, well, I don't go to my work break room and just reminisce about being bipolar with my other bipolar friend at work." But I think online and with stuff like NAMI or DBSA, there's support groups, right? Which is essentially the same, similar to AA or NA, just for mental illness. And the idea is that you go to these groups and then you say the thing out loud that you feel shame about, which is your diagnosis. And then by saying it out loud, I feel less alone after 30 minutes or an hour. I say, oh, I'm not the only one that is hypersexual when I'm bipolar. And oh, yeah, see these symptoms in the DSM. Oh, yeah, yeah, I do that too. You gamble, I gamble. But my experience, and it's like should take my own advice. It's like, well, I still subject myself to these groups, and I go, I think well, I have to speak for myself, not other people. I'm over identifying with it too much to the point where I go, well, is that my only identity? And I guess that maybe that's also true because I go to 12 step meetings too, because I guess I have a lot of issues here. And so it's like, does that make sense? So you over identify with the thing, and
Oh,
what
yeah.
people want to know is how to get better. I mean,
Right.
or I mean, I hope they want to know like who. I don't want to just sit around and talk about how sad I am and call that acceptance, because I think that that's how it's been
Well,
pitched to
let me
people.
tell you
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you asked about, do I prescribe? Um, I do prescribe, but for most people, I don't prescribe anything. If I do prescribe something, it's often going to be something to help somebody sleep or
Well,
uh,
that's me with the Seroquel. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
cerebral,
Well, it's not the only thing, but you mean like Ambien or
yeah,
Trazodone or,
yeah, yeah.
something maybe. Yeah. Anyway, well, sleep's a big thing
But
when you start.
but
Yeah.
generally,
Yeah.
I don't think that the pills are smart,
Okay. Well,
and
I'm glad that
you don't know
I'm
what the
glad that
problem
some,
is, where to go, to fix it.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm glad that you're saying that as a medical doctor, because I mean, I haven't had a ton of I just had Dr. Robert Smith on, which was cool, but I haven't had a lot of doctors on here. I had one friend, Michelle, who got off all her meds, bipolar, and that, and I have friends who are like, "Hey man, have you ever thought about, getting off the meds?" I mean, it's such a big decision because I don't want to I don't
I'm
want
not
to yeah,
advising
right.
anybody
No, I know you're not.
to
But
get
yeah.
off the meds.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you do, you're going to go into withdrawal and you're going to get very sick.
You got to be very careful. Yeah, you got to be very
Yeah,
careful.
and it may be that for a given person, a certain medication might be helpful. But I think that the whole philosophy in psychiatry changed in the 1980s.
Okay.
In the 60s and 70s and 50s, psychoanalysis was in its heyday. And you couldn't be anywhere in academic psychiatry unless you were a psychoanalyst. And today, you can't find a psychoanalyst at an academic center. Uh, they just don't exist.
Okay.
It's all. And what I saw in the 1980s at McLean, I was an attending psychiatrist,
What is McLean again? Is that a hospital? Or
McLean is the flagship hospital of Harvard,
oh,
psychiatric
okay.
hospital,
Gotcha.
and it's sort of like the old asylum in the 1980s,
Okay,
back then the
I got
1880s.
you. I was
Yeah.
distracted for a second because I was like, John McClane, Die Hard? I was like, I figured, okay, anyway, sorry. Keep going.
Uh,
Like, if I didn't know what
but
that, I
yeah,
just
so
wanted to know what that
McLean
was. But yeah, yeah.
is supposedly it's the number one psychiatric hospital in the country,
Okay.
but
What does number one mean? You mean just most
well, U.S.
revered, like,
News and World Report, they have a big sign out front saying that.
okay,
But I think the psychiatric care today, even at McLean, has a lot to be desired,
okay,
and that's just my opinion.
okay,
And that I was part of the attending staff, and we were a group of about 20 experienced therapists who had offices and secretarial staff in McLean. And in 1993, they suddenly, sort of like with Trump, they disbanded the attending psychiatrists. And today, people don't get talked to a great deal. They get put on medicine. And so I think psychiatry has really regressed, right? I think in the times when I would see somebody 4 times a week while they were an inpatient, and the insurance companies paid for 2 months. That's what Blue Cross paid as a standard, and people got better. And
What you
then,
mean? What you mean? 2 months of inpatient, like 60
yeah,
days, as opposed to like a
yeah,
51, 53 days, or like a lot of places, it's very short term. They kick you
exactly,
out after a week. That's very
right.
rare to find a place. So is 1983, is this the Reagan administration? Because he did
This
away
was
with a lot of,
93.
oh, 93. I think you said
Yeah,
83. Okay.
yeah.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Keep going. So yeah, it's just, yeah,
So the state of
yeah, yeah,
psychiatry today is where there's a philosophy
right.
that psychiatric problems are mental illnesses, and they're in this DSM uh, uh, five R now, which I think is the dumbest book ever written.
That's the most recent
And
one, right?
yeah,
2013 or
yeah,
14. Has it
yeah.
been updated since then?
I don't read it.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay. I listened to Alan Francis's book Saving Normal about how he was on the board and how he just thinks I'm sure you guys have similar opinions about just the criteria keeps expanding and expanding and expanding as
Right,
far
and
as
what
like
we could
labeling
do,
things. Right,
if,
right.
we could get two more people, we could sit in the room and we could say, let's come up with a diagnosis. What about son of a bitch? Yeah, yeah. Now, what are the criteria? Well, they curse a lot, they
Right.
drink a
So,
lot of
son of a
beer,
bitch is a
they don't pay their
diagnosis.
debts, uh, and let's find 7 criteria. It's interesting for this study that I'm doing for the FDA. We're treating I keep mentioning we're doing treating fentanyl addiction
Okay.
with the treatment that I came up with.
Okay.
Uh, and so the FDA wanted us to get um, a DSM diagnosis on these people, and that consists of asking 11 questions. And these 11 questions are all identical, really. Do you ever crave opiates? Uh, does it interfere with your work? Do you go into dangerous places? And so it's really the same question 11 times. And the majority of people, I would say 90%, score all 11. Uh, the lowest score is 9. And to have a severe opioid use disorder, you have to score more than 8. So, and it's really silly.
You said
Uh,
the common score is 90?
no, the common score is 11 out of 11.
Oh, okay. Okay. 11 out of
And
11.
and and some people, the lowest score that we see is 9 out of 11.
Oh, 9. Okay, that's the
And
lowest.
so it
Okay.
doesn't really tell you anything. And they're the same, it's really the same question over and over
And
again.
that's deciding if you're addicted to it. That's what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah.
if you have more than two, you have an opioid use disorder.
Oh, I see. So 2 out of 11 questions.
Yeah.
You're already. What
Yeah.
what is fentanyl again? I mean, I feel like I should
Okay.
know this because it's so common in
Fentanyl
the news
is what
and
has
yeah.
replaced heroin.
Okay.
You can't get heroin anymore. You get fentanyl, and fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin. And it's
Wow.
very,
Right.
very hard to get off. It's extremely addicting, and
Right.
people spend their day using it and then go into withdrawal. They use it again. So they use it several times a day, and they spend all their money on it, and they can't work.
Right.
A few people work on it, but they're unusual.
Right. And the only kind of quick there's that medical show called The Pit on HBO. I've seen some of it. It's like kind of like a modern ER kind of show, but like the girl overdoses and she's in the car and they give her the Narcan in the
Yeah.
nose. So that's a quick thing. It's in schools, but that still people are still dying because they could take too much and Narcan might not
And
save them. Yeah.
and
Right.
it kills. I don't know. I don't keep statistics in my head, but it's a tremendous number. And in every city, you have sections of the city where people are living in tents or sleeping on the sidewalk and shooting up
Right. Right.
and the city tries to push them from one place to another and
Yeah,
uh,
LA is like an hour away from me, and there's a lot of, I mean, there's homeless people, cities over from where I'm at too. But like, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of that going on in all those places. But it's also like kids in high school or teenagers as well. It's not just reserved for, like people on the streets because you would assume that that's kind of already there. So,
well, the people in the streets are end stage, but that's where you go if you
Okay.
start it because it's so addicting, you can't get off it.
Right.
And except that we're getting really good results in our study. So the half the people we're enrolling 130 people, and the uh, uh, we have a lot of dropouts, but I think they're mostly in the sham group. So half the group, half of the patients get active treatment, and half get a sham treatment. And about half the people are doing very well, and about half are doing very poorly.
Okay. So yeah, so this, and I wish I would have read more of the book, but I'll have to get more into it. But I'm glad to be talking to you still. So the idea is that um, so someone's come into your office, they have a lot of trauma, and you have the power of the pen
Uh-huh.
to subscribe something. Not subscribe. That's a
Prescribe.
subscription for, Apple TV or something. Prescribe, right? You could say, hey, they could say, I'm hearing voices. You go, hey, here's some Haldol, and here's a Invega shot, whatever, right? Here's Risperidol. I feel like my mom has joked with me that I've been like a human pharmacy over the years. I've probably, unfortunately taken many different things and been through the system, but if I could go back in time and I'm like in your office at the beginning of 22-year-old Jared, who's about to be 40 in November, right? Like, and I start telling you about my dad was abusive and yelled and all this instability as a kid, and then now you know what you know now.
Mhm. Right.
Right? Like, that's the thing that's interesting now that I think is not in the mainstream. People I think are still defaulting to what we've been, laughing about a little bit, but it's not really funny because it's people's lives
Yeah, and
who,
it's affected
right.
your life profoundly, I'm
It
sure.
has, yeah, and I watched the documentary Medicating Normal about 4 years ago. That was about the med thing too, and I know it's probably not the only documentary out there, but that was a good one. And it's like, yeah, and I think people can feel. In my case, you're like, well, I don't want to have the experience of being suicidal. And then I think when you hear the word trauma, you can be overwhelmed by like, well, how do I heal from that? And there's the influence of psychedelics as well, right? Where maybe someone goes,
All this
yeah,
is what my book is about. In
yeah,
fact,
yeah, which
I
I gotta
put my
read
book,
right here, guys, right here. So you can't see it with my background. Anyway,
yeah, but I can show it here. I have
yeah,
one.
yeah, show it off, man.
Yeah,
And have you written other books?
I have.
Awesome.
And so let me tell you what my theory is.
Yeah, yeah, get into it. Get
So
into it. It's awesome.
is that backwards?
No, you can see it. It's a little blurry, but
Okay.
that's okay. I'll put a
Um,
link in my notes, and you can get it on Amazon
uh,
and probably on your
yeah, I think
websites.
it's
Yeah,
coming up backwards.
there you go. Goodbye, anxiety, depression,
Yeah, so
addiction,
it says
PTSD.
goodbye, anxiety, depression, addiction, and PTSD.
There we go. Here
The
we go.
life-changing science of dual brain psychology. And my
Okay,
name's at the bottom.
there we go. Of course, yeah, you wrote it.
and, um, and um, so here's the gist of the theory. I can give it a sort of thumbnail. What I discovered was that as an early young psychiatrist, I'm now an old psychiatrist, um, uh, I saw that people were having two different personalities. When they came in, they were very anxious and depressed, and having a lot of symptoms, and then they got better, and they were doing well. Mostly it was with psychotherapy. They might be on some medication too, um, um, and um, and then something would happen, and they'd have a regression, and they'd go back. And when they were doing well, they were mature and healthy, and it was like they were a different person. And then when they regressed, they were back to this sort of childlike person
Hmm.
who was symptomatic. And I started thinking that I wasn't seeing like the Freudian id and superego uh, and ego. I understood what they were, but that's not what I was seeing clinically. I was seeing two different people. And then I started reading about the split brain studies in the 1960s. These were surgeries for epilepsy where they actually cut the brain in half.
Hmm.
And it turns out that each half of the brain can support an intelligent mind that's different. And one person wanted to smoke, and his other hand, connected to his other brain, kept putting the cigarettes out. Two hands were fighting over which sandwich to eat. And there are all these stories about post-commercialotomy syndrome, where they're clearly two different personalities and they have different intentions and different feelings. I went out to California and did the last study on these people, and I put different words up on a computer screen, and I was able to psychologically ask, how much do you feel with different words on the screen? And each hemisphere got all the words. And it turned out that in one person, his right hemisphere had a more positive opinion of himself. His left hemisphere had a low opinion of himself. And in the other patient had about equal opinions. But he told me when we were setting up the equipment that he'd been bullied as a child. And only the left brain can speak in these individuals after surgery. And so when I tested them, I threw in some bully questions. And the hand that was answering for his speaking left brain indicated he was not upset by the bullies. He told me that. And his hand agreed with it.
Okay.
The other hand, assigning for his non-speaking right brain, indicated that he was extremely upset by the bullies. And his excuse was, it happened so long ago. Why should I be upset about it? But his right brain, the mind of his right brain, was extremely upset by the bullies. So, so then I discovered that there's a German group that was purporting to show movies with $1 million machine to one brain or the other,
Okay.
and they got different degrees of upsetness watching a movie. Somebody needed shock treatment, and and so I couldn't afford that, but I realized that all they were doing was showing the movie to the lateral visual field, which is connected to the opposite brain neurologically, and the split brain studies took advantage of that. And so I asked the patient to go like this. I tried it at home and I didn't feel anything.
Okay.
And the patient was a Vietnam vet, and he was doing well. He had PTSD, and he went like that, and he had a flashback. He said, "That plant behind you looks like the jungle." I said, "Really?" I
Hmm.
said, "Try the other side." And he smiled. He said, "No, it's a nice looking plant." And so just by looking out one side like this or like this, can give a very different activation of a different personality in normal people.
Hmm.
And that's what my work is based on. That trauma gets localized in one brain hemisphere, and a brain hemisphere supports a mind. So we have two minds. My first book was called Of Two Minds.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
so what the treatment is, so I have these special glasses, these sunglasses, and they not only look cool, but they stimulate. They do what the hands just did. If I show you here, you can see that there's a window on one side.
Okay.
And my all of my patients wear these, and they'll put them on this way, and I have a conversation with the little boy or little girl, and talk to them about uh, what are you feeling, the guy I saw today, he was severely bullied in high school
Okay.
and junior high. and I mean to an extreme degree. And so he's now in his late 50s, and if he goes for a walk, he's got to know where his car is. It's like this part of him expects the bullies to pop out of a bush and assault him, even though he's in a suburban neighborhood that's quite, uh, calm and
Hmm.
not going to
Hmm.
happen.
And this is
It's like,
how many years later? So he's like this is like when he was a
uh,
kid, and now this is like 20 years later.
well, it's more than that. It's
Okay. Right.
35 years later.
It's interesting because what
And,
I
and, and, and let me
yeah,
just say, if he flips him
right.
this way, he has no fear.
Hmm.
It's all gone. And
Interesting.
if a person has an alcohol craving and they look out the troubled side, I'll have an auction. I'll say, well, I have a beer in my refrigerator. What will you pay me? And I get them up to $500.
Right.
And there's a convenience store down the street. And 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 then I've have him flip the glasses, and he won't pay me anything. I had a guy who was gambling, and I said, "Well, you came to the right place. I happen to have a casino in the back." And I said, "But there's a problem. There's a cover charge." So we had an auction.
Oh yeah, I think I started reading this right before you were jumping on the Zoom. I
Uh,
started reading that.
uh,
That's the first chapter, second
yeah,
chapter. Yeah, yeah.
it might be. Yeah, I don't know where it is.
So yeah, you're so yeah, I think a track with what's going on. Obviously, people listening read the book, myself included, just to get into it more. But yeah, it's like so like instead of um uh you know, I was about to use the word normal, like normal therapy, you would, obviously take some time to get used to the therapist, and you would start getting into kind of this like, hey, well, in a talk way, you would kind of in a storytelling way go back to like, hey, well, my dad did this, my mom did this, and that's a struggle for a lot of people because it just depends on, can take a while to get to like, oh, okay, that made you sad, that made you mad, what did you do,
Mhm.
you're so what is the process of like, because I think when people hear the word trauma and then you're like, hey, how do you heal from this? I know there's like EMDR, which I've never done. I just know kind of conceptually what it is, right?
Mhm.
What is your like um process of, like what do you do in these sessions then with people? Is it like helping them to heal from it because of this kind of, because I get what you're saying. It's like, yeah, I think the trauma lives in a part of our brain that we've
Right.
closed
Okay.
ourselves off to. Right,
Yeah,
right.
so what I do is I talk to the trouble part.
Okay. The part
And
that's the traumatized, like the kid
yeah,
being bullied, you go back
yeah.
to that.
So put the glasses on and then we'll have a conversation. And do you want to try it?
Right.
Do you have an envelope handy? Or would you rather not?
Oh, wait, what'd you say? You want me to try it?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Okay.
I did this once with a gal who was like doing this healing thing, and I was like, all right, sure, it's my part.
No,
Go back to my troubled past as a little kid. I mean, I
do
talk about
you
it a
have
lot,
like
but
an envelope or something?
what'd you say?
Do you have an envelope handy?
An envelope.
Or
Not like I have like
what do you have in your hand there? Is that a card? Wait,
I have some flashcards.
yeah, okay, that's good. Flashcards
Okay.
are great. Okay.
Okay.
So I want you to block one eye and the middle of the other eye. So that's it.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Now, so I want you to
All right.
think of something upsetting, maybe something with your father,
Hmm.
from 0 to 10, how much anxiety or distress do you feel?
Oh man. Oh gosh. I mean, probably like 8 or 9. It's just,
Okay.
I mean, there's
Now I
so many
want you to look
examples,
at the
but
other eye.
okay, look, the eye that's
Move it
completely,
over.
the eye that's completely
Cover your
closed.
left eye and look out the lateral side of your right eye.
So like look to the this eye to the side like this.
Yeah, that's right. Just like you just did.
Okay, I'm doing that.
No, you got to move. That's you just looked at that eye. I want
Oh,
you to try
but
that.
keep my left eye closed,
Yeah, you can close it or cover it.
and then but look to the side of my right eye.
That's right.
Okay,
Okay, and
got
look at
ya.
it. Turn your head. Turn your head. So you look at me. No, no, look at me here, so I can see what you're doing.
Okay.
No, let me see your eye, your right eye. Look at me. I think you're covering your whole right eye. Okay.
Oh, like this?
Now, no, go like. Let me show you. So you cover your left eye and then and half of your right eye.
Should I use my phone?
Yeah. Okay. So that's the left side.
Okay.
Move it over. Okay.
So
Now
go.
try that
Oh,
more.
so cover. So like
Uh,
this,
yeah, and move it over further. So
like
it's after.
this.
Yeah. If you look
Okay.
at the whole eye, it goes to both hemispheres.
Okay.
And we have fMRIs that document that we're stimulating that brain hemisphere.
Okay.
So if you think of the same thing that you thought on the other side, how much distress do you feel or
Well,
anxiety?
yeah, probably like 9 or 10. I was going back to a specific memory of something. I mean, I can tell you what it is, but just I'm thinking of it. So,
Is there any difference between the sides?
um, so you're saying that the eye that's covered up, keep it covered up, but then the eye right here where I'm halfway, I'm
Yeah,
supposed to look to the side or keep looking
no, you can
straight?
look straight. Yeah,
Okay, I'm looking straight right now, but keep the other eye closed.
we're covered. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. I have a kind of squinting glass.
Open your eye. Yeah, there you go. And if that's too intense, think of something. Just think of something ordinary, like what you had for lunch today.
Oh,
You're
right.
looking at the whole eye, and that won't work. There you go. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
How do you feel when you look out the side? You got to open your eye to look.
So the idea that is that there's less distress looking to the side.
Not
Is that
looking to the side, but the eye is divided with the retina. The
okay?
light comes in through the lens and it strikes the retina on the medial side, and that neurologically connected to the opposite brain. So if you here's my left eye,
Okay.
and if I look at something here, it goes hits this part and goes to my right brain. And if I'm over here and I look over here, it hits this part and goes to my left brain.
Okay. So yeah, you kind of walk people through this process and they discover that um like maybe they just haven't been kind of because of this exercise, they haven't felt something that existed a long time ago and then they start to
Well, no,
feel that again.
something that what happens usually is that the person's feeling the negative side all the time, and that they, for the
Right.
first time, feel good.
Okay, right. So
It's
they
like, whoa, what's this? My anxiety went away.
yeah, they experience the as if it wasn't there.
They
Kind
feel
of.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one side is healthy, and the other side is affected by the trauma and is not well.
So would you yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
And then
so
the question is
right.
so how do you treat the trauma?
Well,
And
yeah, because living without it, that's the experience that, well, maybe, you don't like know what it's like until you experience like, oh, this is what it's like to feel better. And maybe would you call that healing? Was it healed, or is that more just like an awareness of,
no,
yeah,
you can heal people,
right,
but it's not a simple thing.
right, for
That
sure.
there are a lot of things that happen. In other words, if a person really improves, their troubled side may get upset and feel, "Hey, you want me to go out on disability? You know, the hell with you."
Right,
and it
right,
kicks up a storm, or when you get well, you see how sick you were, and it's really painful, and it's a hard process to get through. You have to
right,
be able to bear that pain, and the treatment for trauma is to be able to sit with it to the point where you don't have to run from it, and to see that you can stand it, and to learn that you're not in Vietnam anymore, or you're not. In other words, it's teaching that little boy inside or little girl, as the case may be, that the trauma is actually over, uh, and um, and the other way that I have for stimulating the healthy side is with a light that I put on the forehead. So it's an LED, and it goes through the skull. The light actually goes through the skull into the brain and stimulates the brain. It's called biophotomodulation,
okay,
biophotomodulation. And I'm the only person who does it on one side. If you do it on both sides, you defeat yourself because you're
okay,
stimulating both sides,
okay,
and one side's troubled. I have a new device that stimulates the positive and inhibits the negative side, and it's more effective. But that light treatment has no known side effects that we've seen. The only side effect is that sometimes people will get upset because they feel better, like I just said, and their negative side may rebel, and then you have to talk to them, and they'll be okay.
mm,
But
mm.
they don't get sick from it.
Yeah, getting upset over feeling better. I can, yeah, I think that yeah, that's more of a reaction to just proving that you've been feeling bad for a long time. So that's a new thing to feel good. So yeah, maybe your actions
Yeah,
just
and
anger,
also
but yeah,
if you're
well,
feeling good, it's like going to a foreign country and you don't know the language, you don't know the customs, that you know this world, and it's like a different world where you're not well,
right,
and people treat you badly, and your expectations are negative, and
right,
in this other world, it's like you're a different person, and it's like, who is this person?
yeah.
And it's disconcerting.
Yeah, well, you might, well, yeah, I think my experience, yeah, not just my experience, but I think if you've just been stuck for a long time or dealing with symptoms or whatever language you want to use, it feels too good to be true when you do something that works, like breath work or doing, I've done a couple ice baths. I don't know if you ever done an ice bath.
I
The way
haven't.
you feel after is like really good. Going through it absolutely sucks. You want to
Uh-huh.
get out after like 2 seconds, but like there, whatever. I ran a marathon a bunch of years ago and I felt really good for a while. And then, I ended up, kind of having an episode a couple months later. So not the best idea, but like, yeah, I think we feel like it's too good to be true. And you're not saying it's so simple that like anybody can. Yeah, I get it. I think it's just we're so used to feeling bad. So when we feel good, it's like, how long is this gonna
And then
last? So
there's another piece to trauma that's very important, and Freud talked about this, and that there's a compulsion to repeat the trauma. And there's an example that I give to patients to explain this, because it's a weird concept.
okay,
Uh,
hold
what,
on one second.
uh,
I'm here. I'm here. Sorry, I just had to turn my fan on. Okay,
okay.
keep going.
Uh, uh, I say to my patient, uh, Uh, why would I call up or go to Medford, Massachusetts, where Whitey Bulger used to hang out, and find him and say, "Whitey, you son of a bitch, kill me already"? Why would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And the patient says, "I don't know. You must be crazy." Okay, and I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you a story, and it's going to make sense why I would do that." And so here's my story. I'm sitting talking to this very nice person in the podcast, and we're having a nice conversation.
Right.
And I get a call on my phone, and the guy says, "This is Wade Schiffer. Uh, give me $1 million by 5 o'clock, and bring it to the T station, the public transportation that stopped at the end of my street. Uh, well, you dead meat." And I don't have that kind of money. What are you talking about? Well, then it dead meat, and he hangs up. And and uh, and I'm sick. I have to say, "Look, we have to stop the podcast. I don't feel good." I
Hmm.
go home, and a funny thing happens. I don't sleep that night, and I don't. Next morning, I don't hear from Whitey Bulger, and a week goes by. I don't hear from him. Am I feeling better? No. I'm sick. I haven't slept. I'm wrecked. And Whitey Bulger had a reputation of being a ferocious gangster who would jump down from a tree and hit you with a baseball bat. And he was terrifying to people. And so after a month, I'm sick. I can't stand it. So I go looking for him. Why you killed me already? I can't stand this. So let's get it over with.
Hmm.
And now it makes sense. I mean, it might not be a mature solution or the wisest solution to the problem. Might be better to, get on a plane to Bolivia or something. Um, but that's my solution, and it's a solution of people with trauma that they have to repeat the trauma. A woman with an alcoholic father, who does she marry? She marries an alcoholic who's
Right. Yeah.
falling all over, and he gets better because she nurses him, and she loses interest in him because he's not a stumbling alcoholic,
Right.
and um, uh, that she's repeating her trauma. That's her drive. Her mission in life is to fix her father and
Hmm.
make everything well. And that drive to attend to the traumas is what drives these bad behaviors. That I think that people get addicted to Coke in part because it feels good. You get it up, but you're also addicted to coming down. And why the hell I do that? I put all the money up my nose and feel terrible and withdrawal and shame. And I'm a drug addict and beat myself. Well, that's what your mother said. You never amount to anything, and you're a bum. Like your uncle's a drug addict, and you're going to be a drug addict, and so all that stuff is like going to see Whitey Bulger and you want to get it over with. So you bring on the bad stuff. So trauma is tricky. And people on their own they don't know how to deal with it. Most psychiatrists don't know how to deal with it. Most
Right.
psychiatrists don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I think that, yeah, for sure. And I think it comes back to kind of the beginning of talking the experience of, or I was saying like, hey, you have the ability to just, sit down with someone and listen, do an assessment, however you do that, and just be like, oh, sounds like depression, sounds like bipolar 1, sounds like
But
bipolar
I don't
2.
do that. And,
Well,
and, and,
yeah, right,
and
exactly, yeah.
after a session, a patient feels much better by the time they leave.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying, and I guess it's like, yeah, a lot of psychiatrists probably don't do what you're doing, and they do the
Yeah,
thing where they
not
just go, sounds like,
yeah,
exactly, sounds like this, and then now you're putting someone on a path, and also in those situations the patient needs to be assertive and have autonomy as well, because I think there's this like submit to whatever the doctor says because
right,
you're
right.
not a doctor. And so I definitely relate to that kind of fear dynamic. And so, but it's like is that just because psychiatrists are, and this was Dr. Smith's point, I just had him on about how um, his thing was like that primary care doctors are seeing a lot of people because
Mhm.
people can't even get psychiatrist appointments. So they're not trained, but then they're also like, hey, here's, here's Lexapro, here's this.
Right.
And like, do you think it's just that there's so much, they're not, that psychiatrists aren't trained in trauma, so they just jump to like, I have so many patients, here's meds, and they just kind of hope for the best?
There are a lot of therapists who call themselves trauma therapists. Um, uh, that
Okay.
I don't refer to them.
You don't refer to someone who would say they're a trauma therapist? That's what you're saying?
I, I, but I have a small list of people I would refer to.
Right, right. Well, because yeah, so is the trauma training, because the thing that I'm learning with this new job and that I've known from working with foster kids a little bit too is that trauma informed care, that's the thing that people, you know, put
Well,
out into a
I think
balloon
that's
into the
important.
atmosphere.
And there
Yeah,
are there
yeah,
are good therapists who
right,
wow, but where
right,
you find them and so forth is hard to tell.
right,
And
right.
and
You
I
kind of
think
don't know until you would go, maybe like, hey,
well,
what is this
even then
person?
it's hard
Yeah,
to know because
right,
as you
right,
say, you can have a warm chat with somebody for 30 years and not really go anywhere. And
right,
I think good therapy is very effective, but to find it is very hard, and it's
right.
hard to be a consumer because it's very hard to know where you are and what you need and where you can find it and whether what you're getting is what you need. And
Yeah,
I
for
have
sure.
I have people who drop out of my work. They don't like what I'm doing, and fine. I have to. I can only work with someone who likes what I'm doing and
For sure.
cooperates with me. Yeah,
Yeah, you have to, yeah,
I
you have to,
support that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just, yeah, you have to be open to um trying new things, probably both, someone in your position and someone that's like, if you do need to want to get better, so you need to have a certain level of like openness and humility to like, hey, this guy's gonna make me close one of my eyes. I mean,
Uh,
I just tried to do your exercise, and obviously, we can do it a different time when we're not
Actually,
recording, and
for
but yeah,
my
yeah,
patients, it's very effective.
right,
And about 55% of patients in the series that I published
right,
had very intense responses, and about 30% had positive responses that were therapeutically useful, and about 15% had no response. And so most of my patients, you're able to use this technique, and I think again, plugging my book, but I mean it is that I think the book can help a lot of people if they read it, it's a substantive book. I think I tried to write it as an easy read, but with a lot of substance, and I think it actually can help you.
okay,
It's not a
yeah,
self-help book per se. There's a
yeah,
chapter for self-help, but I think it actually informs people about how the mind really works.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I appreciate your perspective and your honesty, and I know we just, you know, feel like you're easy to talk to, and I've appreciated being able to be real about my own experiences as well. I've had this podcast for a long time, and it's cool to get to talk to someone who's, um, you know, not just a, lay person, because that's mostly who I've, lay people with things that they're good at and specialize in. But it'd be cool to talk to more people like you who are like, in this field. And how long have you been a doctor? When did you start?
Graduated medical school in 1971, which was 64 years ago.
Okay. All right. So you're gonna go.
81 years old.
Oh wow. All right, you're looking good, man.
Uh,
You're just gonna go another 20 years?
Until the
You're
boots fall off,
till you're
yeah.
101?
Still 101, yeah.
Wow, you guys got some harsh winters out there in Boston, so hopefully it's
I'm sorry.
this. I said you guys get some harsh winters out there in Massachusetts, so hopefully I said Boston, but yeah, you get some harsh East Coast winters, so hopefully it's like starting to be like sunny outside where you're
Yeah,
at.
it is, yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I really appreciate you coming on. I'll put the link to your book in my notes, and I'll get the other information from you. I know you probably have a you have a website. What's the best way
I
for people
do.
to
It's called
talk to you?
dual brain psychology.
Okay.
Dual brain psychology. And I didn't say dual brain psychiatry because I like
Yeah.
uh, psychology, the word psychology better. So
Right on.
dualbrainpsychology.com.
Okay. And then do you use social media, or you have someone do that for you?
Yeah,
You use like
somebody do it.
okay.
One of the main sites, and I have podcasts that are posted.
Yeah, I'll get all that information from whoever emailed me about you. I
Mark,
forget
yeah,
Mark. Yeah,
Mark,
Mark.
yeah.
Yeah, but I appreciate this coming on, and like I said, I got to get into your book more, and
And
I
let me know what you think.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's I had Dr. Robert Smith on, and I'm like, shoot, I need to read that book too. I looked at a little bit of it, so it's like I got a lot of reading to do. But yeah, I know that's cool that I got The Body Keeps the Score right here on next to my I know there's other books on trauma. I think I have. That's cool that you know Bessel. Is that how you say his
Yes,
name?
that's his
Yeah,
name.
that's cool. Is he still in the area where you
Yeah,
live?
yeah.
He is? Awesome. That's cool. Well, Dr. How do you say your last name? Schiffer?
Schiffer,
Schiffer.
SCHIFFER.
Okay, Schiffer. I appreciate your time, and I'll email with you and with your team about when this is going to get published. Let you go, and have a great night, and thanks for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
All right. Goodbye.